In the dimming light of a bustling farmer's market, Margaret sat quietly at the edge of the crowd. Her weathered hands rested on her lap, trembling slightly from the cold. A simple wooden crate stood before her, displaying an assortment of cherished items: a delicate porcelain figurine with a chipped base, a tarnished silver locket, an intricately carved jewelry box, and lace napkins she had crocheted decades ago. These weren't just things. They were fragments of a life she once knew, now put up for sale to keep hunger at bay. Margaret's heart was heavy. Her only son, Brian, had drained her savings, stolen her small pension, and left her to scrape by with what little she had left. Despite it all, she couldn't bring herself to turn him away. She had raised him alone, pouring every ounce of love she had into him. And though he had grown into a man lost to addiction, she still saw traces of the boy she adored. "This must be my punishment," she whispered under her breath, clutching her scarf tightly as the wind bit through her thin coat. "For all the mistakes I've made in life." The market was lively, filled with the sounds of vendors shouting their last-minute deals and children laughing as they skipped between the stalls. But Margaret felt invisible. Shoppers passed her by without so much as a glance. Those who did look her way offered only fleeting expressions of pity before moving on. Margaret's life hadn't always been this way. In her younger years, she had been a devoted nanny, caring for children with a love and tenderness that rivaled that of their own parents. One child in particular, Helen, had left an indelible mark on her heart. Helen was a bright, curious girl whose laughter could light up a room. Her parents were often busy with work, and leaving Margaret to fill the role of caregiver, confidant, and at times, surrogate mother. For 7 wonderful years, Margaret and Helen were inseparable. But then, as often happens in life, circumstances changed. Helen's family moved to another city, and the bond they shared was severed. Decades had passed since then, and Margaret often wondered what had become of the little girl she once loved like her own. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the market, Margaret prepared to pack up her belongings. Her shoulders slumped as she realized she hadn't sold a single item. Just as she was about to stand, a well-dressed woman in her 40s stopped in front of her crate. The woman's eyes lingered on the jewelry box, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Excuse me," she said softly. "This jewelry box, it looks so familiar." "Where did you get it?" Margaret hesitated, unsure how to respond. It belonged to my mother," she said finally. "I've had it for years." The woman studied Margaret's face, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. "Margaret," she said, her voice trembling. Could it really be you?" Margaret froze. The woman's voice, her eyes, they were unmistakable. "Helen?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Helen, is that you?" Tears filled Helen's eyes as she nodded. "It's me." "Oh, Margaret, I can't believe it's you." Without hesitation, Helen knelt and embraced Margaret, her arms wrapping tightly around the woman who had once been her second mother. Margaret clung to her, tears streaming down her face as years of loneliness and heartache melted away. Helen refused to let Margaret spend another night alone. She helped Margaret pack up her belongings and insisted she come home with her. Margaret protested weakly, but the warmth in Helen's voice and the strength of her embrace left no room for argument. That evening, Helen prepared a hearty meal and sat across from Margaret in her cozy dining room. The glow of the fireplace and the soft hum of conversation created a stark contrast to the cold, lonely market corner where Margaret had spent her day. "Tell me everything," Helen urged gently. "What's happened to you all these years?" Margaret hesitated, ashamed to share her struggles. But Helen's earnest gaze gave her the courage to speak. She recounted her life since they last saw each other, the joys, the heartbreaks, and, most painfully, her struggles with Brian. "I must have failed him somehow," Margaret said, her voice breaking. "I don't know where I went wrong. I tried to be a good mother, but look at where we are now." Helen reached across the table, taking Margaret's hand in hers. "You didn't fail him, Margaret," she said firmly. "Sometimes people lose their way. But that doesn't mean it's your fault, and you don't have to face this alone anymore." The next morning, Helen sprang into action. She helped Margaret settle her overdue bills, stocked her pantry with groceries, and even arranged for Margaret to see a doctor about her worsening arthritis. But Helen knew that true change required more than temporary relief. "We need to help Brian," Helen said. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I've tried, Helen. I've tried so many times. What if he refuses? What if he never changes?" Helen placed a comforting hand on Margaret's shoulder. "Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they're ready to climb back up. But we have to give him the chance." To Margaret's astonishment, Brian agreed to enter a rehabilitation program. Seeing his mother's tears and Helen's unwavering support stirred something within him, a faint glimmer of the man he used to be. As Brian began his journey to recovery, Margaret found solace in Helen's presence. Helen's young daughter, Lily, quickly grew attached to Margaret, calling her grandma from the very beginning. The sound of that word warmed Margaret's heart in a way she hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, as Lily played with Margaret's old jewelry box, Helen shared a memory. "You know, Margaret, you were more than a nanny to me," Helen said. "You were my rock when my parents were too busy to notice me. You taught me kindness and resilience. I wouldn't be who I am today without you." Margaret smiled, her eyes misty. "Oh, Helen, I was the lucky one. You gave me purpose during a very dark time in my life." The bond between them deepened as they shared memories and created new ones. Margaret began to feel a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in decades. Months passed, and Brian made significant progress in his recovery. One evening, he sat with Margaret, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Mom," he said, "I've taken so much from you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Margaret embraced him tightly, her tears soaking his shoulder. "You've always had my forgiveness, Brian. I just want you to be happy." For the first time in years, Margaret felt a sense of peace. She had her son back, a family that loved her, and a newfound sense of purpose. Margaret's life transformed in ways she never imagined. She began volunteering at the rehabilitation center where Brian was receiving treatment, sharing her story with other families who were struggling. "Sometimes," she told them, "life takes us to our lowest points to remind us of what truly matters. It's never too late to find hope, love, and forgiveness." Helen, too, played a significant role in Margaret's healing. She included Margaret in every aspect of her family's life, ensuring she never felt alone again. One sunny afternoon, as Margaret watched Lily play in the garden, she turned to Helen and said, "Thank you for finding me. I thought my life was over, but you reminded me that it's never too late for a new beginning." Helen smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You found me first, Margaret. You gave me a second mother when I needed one most. Now it's my turn to do the same for you." Margaret's story is a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the enduring bonds of family. It reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there is hope. Sometimes all it takes is one person's compassion to light the way to healing. If this story touched your heart, consider sharing it with someone who might need a reminder that they're not alone. At Life Stories 365, we believe in the transformative power of storytelling. Each story we share is a reminder that hope, love, and connection can heal even the deepest wounds. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of resilience and transformation. Share this video with your friends and loved ones. Comment below to share your thoughts or tell us your own story. Your story matters. Together, let's build a world where kindness and compassion shine brightest. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.